Have you ever opened the wrong door, and in one single second, your entire life changed forever? What if that door belonged to the scariest, most powerful woman you've ever met, and she was crying her eyes out? Keep watching, because this embarrassing mistake turned into the greatest love story I never saw coming. I stood frozen in the doorway, steam billowing around me, as Victoria Hayes, my notoriously cold boss, who'd barely acknowledged my existence, clutched a towel to her chest, mascara streaking down her face, as she sobbed uncontrollably on the edge of her private bathroom's marble bench. Our eyes met in the mirror. Time stopped. In that moment, I wasn't looking at the fearsome publishing executive who made seasoned editors tremble. I was seeing a woman breaking apart at the seams. "Get out," she hissed. But something in her voice cracked. Maybe it was the single dad in me, used to comforting my daughter through countless tears, but I couldn't just leave. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Hayes. I thought this was the supply closet," I stammered, backing away but not quite leaving. "Are you okay?" 3 days earlier, I'd been desperately grateful when Meridian Publishing offered me the position of senior copy editor. After my wife's death 2 years ago, I'd been struggling to balance freelance work with raising my 8-year-old daughter, Emma. This job meant stability, benefits, and a chance to rebuild our lives. I'd heard the rumors about Victoria Hayes, the Ice Queen, the Dragon Lady, the publishing genius who climbed to CEO by age 35 through pure, ruthless ambition. But I needed this job too badly to be scared. Victoria had barely glanced at me during my orientation, dismissing me with a curt nod when we were introduced. She was stunning in that untouchable way, always perfectly dressed in designer suits, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, voice sharp and commanding. The whole office lived in fear of her cutting remarks and impossible standards. Now here she was, broken open in front of me, looking completely human. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone, you're fired," she said, wiping furiously at her eyes. "This bathroom is clearly marked private. Can't you read?" I should have apologized again and run. Instead, I pulled a clean handkerchief from my pocket, a habit from Emma's scraped knees and ice cream emergencies, and held it out. "I won't tell anyone," I said quietly. "But sometimes it helps to talk to a stranger." She stared at the handkerchief like it might bite her. "Do people actually still carry these?" "Single dads of messy 8-year-olds do," I replied with a small smile. Something in her face shifted. She took the handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes. "My father died this morning," she said, the words dropping between us like stones. "Heart attack. I was on the phone with him when it happened." The raw pain in her voice hit me hard. I knew that pain, the sudden, world-shattering loss that leaves you empty. "I'm so sorry," I said, meaning it with everything I had. "I lost my wife 2 years ago." There are no words. Victoria looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. "You should go," she said, but the edge was gone from her voice. I nodded, backed out, and closed the door softly behind me. I thought that would be the end of it. She'd pretend it never happened and keep treating me like invisible office furniture. I was wrong. The next morning, my handkerchief appeared on my desk, clean, pressed, with a tiny note. "Thank you, V." That afternoon, I was called to her office, sure I was about to be fired. Instead, she asked me to edit her eulogy for her father. "I'm told you have a way with words," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "And you understand this." I did understand. The impossible job of putting a whole life into a few paragraphs. The pressure to find perfect words for a complicated relationship. I stayed late that night, working through her draft, feeling the love and the hurt she had for her father between every line. When I gave it back the next day, she read it in silence, then looked up with eyes that were suspiciously bright. "You kept all my words, but somehow made them better." "That's my job," I said simply. "Will you come?" she asked suddenly. "To the funeral." There won't be many people." That's how I ended up sitting in a half-empty church that Saturday, Emma beside me in her best dress, watching Victoria Hayes stand strong and alone at the podium, delivering the eulogy we'd written together. My daughter reached for my hand when Victoria's voice wavered and whispered, "She's sad like we were, Daddy." After the service, Victoria walked over, her professional mask back in place, except for the surprise that flashed across her face when she saw Emma. "This is my daughter Emma," I explained. "Emma, this is Ms. Hayes, my boss. You look pretty when you're not sad," Emma said with the brutal honesty only kids have. To my shock, Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. "Thank you for coming today. It's very brave to go to sad places when you don't have to. Daddy says it's important to show up for people," Emma replied, "even when it's hard." Something softened in Victoria's eyes, a crack in the armor I'd never seen before. She invited us to the small reception afterward, and I watched in amazement as my little girl somehow melted the walls Victoria had built around herself. They talked about books. Emma was obsessed with mythology, and Victoria actually smiled when Emma announced that Artemis was way cooler than Aphrodite because she doesn't need a boyfriend to be awesome. Over the next few weeks, everything changed at work, slowly. Victoria was still demanding, still exacting, but the random cruelty that used to terrify the office started to fade. She began nodding to me in hallways, sometimes stopping to ask real questions about projects. The rumor mill went wild, but the truth was simpler and way more complicated than gossip. We were two people who had seen each other's scars and recognized the same pain. 1 month after the funeral, Victoria stopped by my desk late one evening as I was rushing to finish before picking Emma up. "You don't need to stay late," she said. "I've seen your work suffer when you're exhausted." I blinked in surprise. "Thank you, but Emma's program ends at 6, and I still need to." "I could give you a ride," she offered, then immediately looked like she regretted it. "I'm heading downtown anyway." That was the first of many rides. Somehow, Victoria Hayes, the woman who terrified literary agents and made marketing directors cry, was completely disarmed by my daughter's endless chatter about school drama and her very strong opinions on the Percy Jackson books. One evening, after Victoria dropped us at our little apartment, Emma asked, "Why don't we ever invite Miss Victoria for dinner? She always looks hungry." I laughed. "Hungry? Not for food," Emma said, wise beyond her years. "For people. She looks at us like we're cake and she's on a diet." So, we invited her to dinner. To my shock, she said yes. She arrived with an expensive bottle of wine and a beautiful children's book for Emma, looking almost nervous in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my rent. "Your home is lovely," she said, glancing around our small, cozy apartment with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in Emma's drawings. "It's small, but it works for us," I said, suddenly self-conscious. "It feels like a home," she said softly, and something in her voice made me wonder what she went home to every night. Dinner was spaghetti and meatballs, Emma's favorite. I watched in total fascination as Victoria Hayes, terror of Meridian Publishing, twirled pasta and laughed at my daughter's terrible jokes. After Emma went to bed, we sat on the balcony with our wine, city lights sparkling below us. "Thank you," she said after a long, comfortable silence. "I can't remember the last time I had a real family dinner." "Even before your father?" I let the question hang. Victoria swirled her wine, staring into the glass like it held answers. "My father and I, we had a complicated relationship. He built Meridian from nothing. Expected me to do the same with whatever he gave me. Excellence was the baseline, not something to praise." She looked up at me. "The last time he told me he was proud of me was when I made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. I was 28. And your mother left when I was 12. She continued. "Decided corporate life and motherhood didn't mix. Apparently I take after her ambition, yes, but not the maternal instinct." I thought about how gently she knelt to speak to Emma at the funeral, how she listened to every word my daughter said. "I think you sell yourself short," I said. She laughed, but it wasn't her usual sharp sound. "The office would disagree. People fear what they don't understand," I told her. "And you never let anyone understand you. Except you, apparently," she said, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stopped my heart. Why is that, Daniel? I thought carefully. Because I saw you. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, just Victoria, having a very human moment. Most people would have used that against me. I'm not most people. No, she whispered softly. You're not. That night changed everything. At work she kept her distance, but there was a new warmth underneath. She started making big changes at Meridian: flexible hours for parents, remote work options, a real mentorship program. The office went from terrified to happy. Then came the company retreat, 3 days at a luxury resort upstate, mandatory for senior staff. I almost said no, childcare for Emma was impossible, until Victoria casually mentioned family members were welcome and there were kids' activities all weekend. You arranged this? I asked in her office. She shrugged, but couldn't hide her smile. It made business sense. We lose too many good people when they have families. At the retreat, everyone saw a Victoria they'd never met. She swam with the kids in the pool, gave real effort in team-building games, and on karaoke night she sang, at last, so beautifully the whole room went silent. On the final evening, while Emma played with the other kids, Victoria and I walked along the lake as the sun set. You've changed the company, I said. People actually smile in the elevators now. She laughed. Terrifying, isn't it? My father would be horrified. Happiness doesn't help the bottom line. Doesn't it, though? I asked. Retention is up, productivity is higher, and the last 3 books we bought are getting huge buzz. Maybe, she said, then stopped walking and turned to me. Or maybe I'm just getting soft. I prefer to think of it as growing. She looked out over the water, sunset painting her face gold. Is that what this is, Daniel? Growth? The question meant way more than work, and we both knew it. Over the months we'd fallen into something neither of us had named: dinners at my place, weekend outings with Emma, late-night talks about books, life, and loss. Victoria, I started. She shook her head. I'm still your boss. This is complicated. Life usually is, I said. But some complications are worth it. She took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you. I was offered the CEO job at Penguin Random House, Fiction Division. My stomach dropped. That's incredible. Congratulations. I turned it down. I stared at her. What? Why? Because for the first time in my life, I have something at Meridian worth staying for. Her eyes met mine, steady and sure. Someone, actually. 2 someones. The meaning of her words washed over me like the waves beside us. I'm restructuring the company, she continued. Creating a new position, editorial director, reports to the board, not to me. Equal level. She smiled, nervous. If you're interested. Are you offering me a promotion or permission? I asked, stepping closer. Both, she whispered. If you want them. I took her hand. Emma was right about you. What did she say? That you looked hungry, for people, for connection. Victoria laughed, soft and real. Your daughter is dangerously smart. She gets that from her mom, I said. But her heart? Her capacity to love? I'd like to think we both have that. As the sun disappeared, I leaned in and kissed Victoria Hayes, not the Ice Queen, not my boss, but the woman who showed me second chances come in the strangest packages, and that the heart can rebuild itself stronger than ever. 6 months later, Emma stood between us in Central Park, holding both our hands as Victoria and I said, I do. The Meridian staff, now a real family instead of scared employees, cheered louder than anyone when we kissed. See? Emma whispered as we walked back down the aisle. I told you she just needed us. And she was right. Victoria needed us, just like we needed her. 3 broken people who found the missing pieces in each other and built something beautiful. Sometimes the wrong door leads you exactly where you were always meant to be. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of unexpected love and second chances. Remember, our biggest mistakes can become our greatest blessings, and everyone, Even the scariest boss has a story behind their walls. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.